welcome to what is probably one of my hardest ever driver ratings ever after that Monaco Grand Prix. It was, so difficult because so little happened after that massive first lap crash. No strategy calls, not an awful lot some of the drivers couldn't do. We had, 3 overtakes in the whole race. But please bear with me, I've managed to pull it off. And we'll start right at the front. Charles Leclerc wins. He did everything that he had to do, didn't he? Drove tactically perfect. Managed the gap so that the Norris or Sainz or Piastri, anybody in fact, are the top 3 or 4 behind him who started on the hards on the second restart, couldn't pit and do a different strategy or try something unique, could they? They just managed it, both Ferrari drivers, really well. But Charles Leclerc, fantastic. He was so slow. I mean, 4 seconds off race pace. Anybody that's at the front would do exactly the same thing, though. Limit the risks, and it paid off handsomely, didn't it? A first win, home win. He was so emotional at the end. A fantastic job from him over the whole weekend, because the pressure was on him this weekend, wasn't it? He was fastest in FP2, FP3. In qualifying, it looked like pole was his to lose. He pulled it off with a brilliant last sector, and in the race he did the job, led the way from the front off the start, and then managed and controlled the race brilliantly well. I've gone for a 10 out of 10, no surprise there. A brilliant job from him. Second place, Oscar Piastri, and again, he did a fantastic job. Phenomenal. He looked on it all weekend, and Monaco isn't an easy place to come, especially for a rookie. His second time out here, and he did a fantastic job. Brilliant qualifying. Got away with it a little bit in the first start, didn't he, where Carlos Sainz was alongside him, got a poor start there. Got some damage from that, which was actually quite funny in the post-race podcast of Charles Leclerc held this weekend, wasn't it? He was asking Carlos of how he got his puncture. Didn't realise that actually made contact with Piastri. Had some aero damage from that, but it wasn't too significant. He was, managed the race perfectly well, comfortable, but it was all down to his qualifying performance. I've gone for a 9 out of 10 for him because I think that was a fantastic job from Oscar Piastri. Third place, Carlos Sainz, and he did, he got lucky actually, because he got damage and the puncture, and he would have been way down had the FIA decided that the cut for the timing would have been another sector or 2 later, and he could have started way down in sort of 16th place. So really lucky there, but he was given a second life, and he made the most of it. Came home on the podium, 3rd place. Couldn't ask much for more than that, and I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10. A really, really good job from him. Lando Norris, 4th place finisher, and he'll be disappointed mostly with his qualifying performance, but it was so close at the top 4, a little bit more in it, and he could have been sort of lining up second or potentially even on pole because it was that close up at the front. Not an awful lot he could do in the race because he was sort of stuck in no man's land. The only small opportunity he had was like a couple of laps, wasn't it, where there was a chance for just to get out ahead of George Russell. I think they chose the safest option quite wisely, and he ran home in 4th place. A 7 out of 10 for me for him for this weekend. In 5th place, George Russell. He managed the whole race on the mediums, and I think he did a tremendous job of that, didn't he? I thought he'd be a little bit of a sitting duck when Max Verstappen sort of shot up right behind him, especially what you've seen Lance Stroll doing on the softer tyre with the extra tyre advantage, with the traction out of corners. I thought Max might be able to do that, but Max closed up, and then George managed to pull off some series of decent laps, didn't he? He showed how good a job he did holding that tyre, the medium in fact, all the way to the end, and the guys on the front on the hards were panicking, so this guy, absolutely brilliant job from him. I've given him an 8 out of 10 because I thought that was fantastic to pull off it as well as he did. 6th place, Max Verstappen. It's a weekend to forget for him, isn't it? Because he's just never been settled with the car. The car struggled on the bumps and the curbs. They might struggle again in Canada with the high curbs and how they ride the curbs there. So could we see a potential shifting in the championship here now? It's close up at the top with Charles Leclerc picking up that win, and Max 6th place is a bit of a shock, isn't it, for even for me. And they struggled in Singapore last year, but it wasn't this bad, was it? and a lot of head scratching going on. They'll be a bit worried that they don't have this sort of poor performance at other circuits where they have these sort of characteristics. I've gone for a surprise 6 out of 10, but yeah, he did what he could really from there. Lewis Hamilton, 7th place. I think he did the most disappointing because leading up to qualifying they were sort of right in the hunt, weren't they, potentially for 3rd place, 4th place. Qualifying went horribly wrong for him. He was beaten by his teammates quite surprisingly because he looked like he had the measure of him all weekend. In the race, he was disappointed that they both went for the mediums at the first start, which meant they had to switch. Oh, sorry, they both went for the hards at the first start. Had to then use the mediums so that they didn't have to do a stop in the second restart. And he was disappointed with the team's decision then. And then also being not told that outlap was critical when he was coming in, which I was surprised he kind of needed to be told that. You know, they wasn't miles away from Max Verstappen, and so I'm surprised he just didn't hammer it anyway. The team admitted that there was a bit of a mistake from their part. They were kind of worried, which is a bit weird here. They said that they were worried he might take too much out of the tyres, but given that the rest of the guys were running 70 laps on hards, not sure what the concerns were there really, in my view. Overall, disappointing weekend. I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Lewis Hamilton. 8th place, man, Yuki Tsunoda, and I think he's had a cracking weekend again. Beats his teammate over the whole weekend. More points for him. He's really showing to be the star in that car, isn't he? A fantastic weekend. Good points for the team. Yuki pulling it off. I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for him. 9th place, Alex Albon. 2 points finally, and some first points for the Williams team. A fantastic job here this weekend. Did the job and did the business in qualifying. Did it well off the start, kept out of trouble, managed along with Yuki really well, didn't he, the race, the pair of them, and wasn't really under any threat from behind. They were worried on how they'd be on degging the tyres, and Williams really struggled with that as one of the problems with the car, but they managed really well. I think they were helped with how slow the race was run. But yeah, I've gone for a 9 out of 10, some points and big points for Williams. 10th place, Pierre Gasly, and this is another one, a really good performance for the Alpine, or some points at least. I mean, massively under threat by his own team, and Ocon, didn't he? Nearly took himself out, and he was serious trouble with his team. Gasly was probably disappointed it happened, but glad it didn't really affect his race. A 10th place and some really well-earned points. Another 9 out of 10 for me for Pierre Gasly, because that car has been awful, and he's picked up some points where he could. 11th place, Fernando Alonso. He had the strangest of races, didn't he? He was helping his teammate, backing everybody up, and then manages still to beat his teammate Lance Stroll. Stroll obviously picking up a puncture, he's hit the wall. Was in a bit no man's land, started 14th, finished 11th, made up 3 places, so I can't say he'd be happy with that. He'd want some points. It's Fernando Alonso, but yeah, it's just funny that he's sacrificed his whole race for his teammate and beats him. So 7 out of 10 for me for Fernando Alonso. 12th place finish, Daniel Ricciardo. He started there, finished there. Not an awful lot to say for his weekend and race. I've gone for a 5 out of 10, just considering Yuki was in the points and Daniel, probably there was performance in that car. Didn't pull it off in qualifying. 13th place, Valtteri Bottas. Pit for hards on lap 16, didn't he? One of the first guys to pit, and then you thought he'd then do something. Brilliant move on Logan Sargent. Nicked a place, the only one or 2 drivers to make an overtake in the race, so brilliant from him in terms of that. Made up 4 places from where he started. There was never any chance of points, but I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for him. 14th place, Lance Stroll. Where do we start here? Finished a place down from 13th where he started. Was helped by Fernando Alonso to build a gap and allow him to pit. He ruined that by hitting the wall, got a puncture. He then came out on some softs. A couple of brilliant moves on Zhou Guanyu and Logan Sargent. Moved up the field, but a 4 out of 10 for me, because he's finished behind a guy that his teammate, he was just slow and helping him out all race. Seriously poor from him. 15th place, Logan Sargent. He got one of the only guys to get past, along with Zhou Guanyu in the whole race. He was right at the end. He went hard. In strategy, went to pit early and try to do something at the end. He went for the mediums. Yeah, just wasn't really anywhere. He got a pass on Zhou Guanyu, so that was good at the end. A 5 out of 10 for me for him for this weekend. And the last place finisher, Zhou Guanyu. Yeah, he's another one. Started last and finished last in the end. Not a great race from him. Got passed by Logan Sargent in the end. He needs the performance somewhere, doesn't he? It's not quite happening, and the writing just seems to be on the wall a little bit for him to be losing that seat at the end of the season. I've gone for another 4 out of 10 for me for this weekend. And then let's go through and do a predictions review. I got this pretty wrong, didn't I? I thought Lando Norris would stick it on pole, Max Verstappen second and Charles Leclerc third. I don't think anyone in their wildest dreams would have predicted Red Bull having such a poor weekend. But yeah, it was Leclerc with the pole, Piastri, Sainz in third place, and for the race winner, well, I had it the same, didn't I? I thought Norris would take the win, Max second and Leclerc third. Well, it finished in the order as qualifying: Leclerc win, Piastri second and Sainz third, and the only thing I got right out of there was that it would be the first three would finish in the position they qualified. I predicted it would be a good weekend for McLaren and the Alpine. I'd say that was, with Piastri picking up the second place and Lando in fourth. It was a bad weekend for Mercedes, and I think, they're still the fourth place team. I thought they might do better here than they have. They promised a lot again in Friday. We've seen them do that, but in qualifying they look feisty, didn't they, up into Q2, and then they just never seem to be able to make that gap in Q3, and it happened again at a circuit where it's not really one of their, the weak point of their car is the fast corners, and there's none here, so we kind of expected a bit better from them. I suppose that you can say that they got that with Russell beating the Red Bull of Max Verstappen. But yeah, overall I think they're still the fourth best team, and way down now it looks like on the other three, doesn't it? So a lot of work to do for me from there. There was 4 DNFs, Sergio Perez, so no rating for him. The 2 Hasses, they got disqualified, didn't they, from qualifying for a breach of their rear wing. They used the middle of the rear wing for their DRS to measure the gap. It should be only 85mm. They redesigned their rear wing, so they should have measured it at each side of the end plates where it would have been a bigger gap. They didn't do so. That was bigger than the 85mm. They got disqualified. They started 19th and 20th. Both taken out just after that first corner. Big crash from them. And the other DNF was Ocon, who was really self-inflicted. Disappointing and crazy lunge from him. To do that on his teammate as well, really, really surprising. He took that risk. I know there's no real love lost between them, but you don't do that when there's potentially decent points on the table for you. Disappointing from him from there. No ratings again for any of the DNFs. They didn't do an awful lot of racing, did they? And even if they did, I'm not sure they would have got much further than they did. But there we are. That's the Monaco driver ratings. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment as always. See you next time.